blog entry 83 from 12/15 of 2022. So on this blog entry, I had hung out in Seattle and I'd raised some gas money, but I was really pretty pushed to head south because it was actually cold and dark and wet in Seattle. And in the type of van that I'm in, it's not really formally done with all the insulation, all the add-ons and stuff. You really have to stay where the weather's nice. And so whenever you're traveling through the mountains or you're traveling through an area that the weather drops off in the winter, you'll find that you're pushed, because it gets pretty uncomfortable, to move on through there and get to where the weather's nice. So I was pretty focused on that. So I was in Seattle, I raised the funds I needed, and I headed south. And originally, I didn't realize the amount of weather that Northern California has in the winter, but they have a lot of snow and stuff. So originally I was like, I'll just take Highway 1 down the coast because it's nice, but it's even colder than inland, which I didn't realize that either because I've never lived near the coast. But so I was really quite surprised at the contrast in temperatures. So I ended up just coming down the main highway down through California, through Oregon, and then down into California. And I think I made it down to about Mount Shasta I'd spent the night there. And they had 6 feet of snow on the ground from the week before. And it was 22 degrees the night that I spent there in my van. All right, so here's the van. Here's some things to keep in mind about traveling in a van. Do spend the money and get a really good sleeping bag. And I know I said this like 400,000 blog entries ago, but I'm going to say it again because it's really important. They have some sleeping bags that'll stay warm up to like -30, -40, -50 degrees. And new, they're 100, 200, 300. But it's worth the money to spend, especially if you're in like a hobo van like mine. Because when you get to really cold temperatures like this, you can climb down in that really heavy sleeping bag and put blankets on it and maybe a blanket inside of it with you, and you'll actually stay pretty warm. Now, when you come out of that bag, you just want to stick an arm out of the bag and start the van and let it warm up before you get going. And you're pretty quick to get on the road when you get going in the mornings, but it's doable. And down to about 30 degrees, it's really not terrible. But when it gets down to about 20, it's pretty intense. But in case anybody ever listening to this has the idea to try this, do spend the money, get a great sleeping bag. It's worth it, for sure. Okay. All right. So I have some pictures of Mount Shasta, and I'll post those. It was really pretty cool. This blog entry, I had made it down to San Francisco. And I had to get below Redding into San Francisco for it to get up to 44 degrees. And I was also, in my meditation, feeling this shifting of connectedness, like a deeper stillness, a purer heart, a newer way of like relating to like the material world. It was subtle, but it was really profound because it was shifting my perception and my interaction with reality. And I didn't really have a good way to say this, but it was almost felt like a spiritual marriage to Krishna, to God, because I had said, I'm going to try this orange thing, the sannyasi path thing. I'm going to grow towards it. I'm going to work on it. And it shifted the whole experience for me. And it started laying a foundation more and more and more for that at this time when I wrote this blog entry. And so I found myself pondering this question: how does one fully give themselves to something so vast, so eternal, while still existing in such a transient, noisy material world? And in my blog entry I wrote, I don't have the answer yet, just sitting with the thought and letting it move through me. And it was really wild, because there's such an amazing, steady foundation coming into play at this point on my journey, where Krishna took the time over the past several months before this to start laying the foundation of understanding about the sannyasi path and wearing orange and teaching and what he was really wanting me to do, and to help me understand it more so I could have the capacity to do it, because I had such I missed so much context by where I was born and where I grew up and things like that. But Krishna took so much time in starting to explain that in little bitty bits and pieces so I could like ingest it and understand it and grow. It's just amazing. He's incredible. Yeah. So that's what this blog entry was about. It was a really, I could really feel the foundation starting at that point as I look back on it. It was really amazing. All right, well, that's it for the blog entry today, and thanks for tuning in. Thanks for listening. If you have a chance, like and subscribe to the channel on YouTube. That's awesome. Have a great rest of your day, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.